Grandma never liked her friend, and Yulia couldn't understand why. Grandma was kind, you rarely heard a harsh word from her. She didn't even scold Dad, though he gave plenty of reasons. Yulia's dad drank. He drank heavily with his new wife Marina. Mom had died, drowned in the ice hole right before Dad's eyes. Maybe that's why he drank. At least, that's how Yulia justified it to herself. He didn't help his aging mother, or take care of his daughter. That's why Yulia moved in with Grandma. Together, they managed somehow. Although that father managed to cause trouble too. He took money for firewood but drank it away, promised to fix the roof, but only made it worse. But Grandma didn't scold him. She sighed, shook her head, and said, I raised him this way, now I'm paying for it. But Tatiana, Yulia's best friend, she had no patience for her at all. She called her a nuisance and a busybody. As the girls grew up, she scolded her even more severely. Don't introduce her to your boyfriend, Grandma had drilled into her since childhood. Husbands and friends should be kept apart. Yulia never said she knew where the trouble was coming from. Grandma's friend had taken away her husband, Vladimir, the grandfather, as Dad himself drunkenly recounted. He never forgave his father and didn't even attend the funeral. But Grandma scolded Tatiana in vain, no one helped Yulia as much as her friend. She always let Yulia cheat at school, defended her at vocational school when two senior girls for some reason didn't like Yulia and started picking on her. And, by the way, she was the first to notice that Igor, who had just returned from the army, was looking at Yulia. Once, when they were both 13 and Igor was 15, they were both in love with him. But when was that? And now, 5 years later, Yulia fell in love with him again, but differently, truly. Igor was liked by Grandma. She immediately said, he's a good boy, he suits you. Igor really did suit her, they were on the same wavelength, both wanting a family, 2 children, a boy and a girl, to build a house. That's why in the end they moved to the city. Igor wanted to open his own auto repair shop, but first he needed to gain experience somewhere. And Yulia herself missed the village, she didn't like studying at school. Besides math and history, she didn't like anything, but she turned out to be good at accounting and wanted to develop further in that direction. Everything would have been fine, but Grandma. How can I leave you here? Yulia cried. In recent years, Grandma had completely let herself go, and Yulia understood it perfectly. I have a son here, haven't you forgotten? He'll look after me if anything happens, I'll ask Marina. Marina started drinking less after spending 2 months in the hospital with an ulcer, but Dad continued to cling to the bottle. I can't live without you, Yulia said, hugging Grandma tightly. She always smelled of lavender and rosehip decoction. It was scary. Well, my dear, it's time to grow up, she thought. And wherever you are, I will always take care of you, understand? Always. When Yulia was packing her things, Grandma asked in surprise, why aren't you taking your sweater with you? The green one I knitted for you? The sweater was scratchy, old-fashioned, why would Yulia need it in the city? Grandma, I don't have enough space in my bag, she justified. Oh well, Grandma sighed. All right. In the city, Yulia liked it. At first, it was scary and unfamiliar, but she got used to it. Besides, she enjoyed her job. Igor was doing well too. They made friends, found interesting pastimes. They went to the movies and dances, strolled through the city at night, and visited friends. Initially, they rented a room, but soon they could afford an apartment. Every day Yulia was grateful they didn't have to heat the stove, carry water from the tap, and that there was hot water and a bathtub. The only thing missing was Grandma, whom she always missed. Initially, Yulia tried calling her, but Grandma couldn't hear well, talking was impossible. When long weekends came, she immediately visited her, but it happened rarely. One day, Tatiana appeared on their doorstep. "Hey, can you put me up for a week?" Yulia couldn't refuse her friend and nervously glanced at Igor. He just shrugged. "If we have to, we have to." It turned out Tatiana also decided to move to the city. There weren't enough suitors in the village, but surely there would be plenty here. "I'll find a job now, rent a room," she said confidently. Yulia was happy for her friend and started helping her with her plans. The week stretched into 2, then 3. Tatiana didn't find a job right away, and by the time she did, she was out of money. "How will I pay rent?" she lamented. She had to wait for her paycheck. But Yulia was just glad. She always had fun with Tatiana. "Maybe I'll go home in May," Yulia dreamily said one day. "I miss Grandma so much." Tatiana's eyes widened in surprise. "Don't you know?" "Know what?" Yulia asked. Tatiana covered her mouth with her hand. "Tell me," Yulia urged, feeling anxious. Tears welled up in Tatiana's eyes. "They buried her a month ago. I thought you just couldn't make it." Yulia felt like she was falling into a deep pit, trying to find some support, but couldn't. At work, they let her go. She didn't know why she was going. Grandma was no longer there. But she couldn't believe it. She had to see for herself, go to the grave, find out why no one bothered to tell her about Grandma's death. Dad was drunk as usual. Surprisingly, so was Marina. "Aunt Marina," Yulia exclaimed, "but you have an ulcer, you shouldn't drink." She scolded them in vain. Questioned them, cried. It was all in vain. "I didn't have your phone number," Dad snapped. "You abandoned us, and now you're acting like this." She spent several hours crying at the cemetery, sitting by Grandma's grave. She begged for forgiveness, complained. She reminded herself that Grandma promised she would always be there. Essentially, she had been like a mother to her. In Grandma's house, it was dirty and dark. It habitually smelled of lavender and rosehip decoction. Yulia took the photo album, Grandma's box with various trinkets, brooches, a labor medal, and amber beads. She was about to leave when she remembered she wanted to take her yellow dress, which she had forgotten last time. It was there on the shelf, neatly folded like all her other things, as if Grandma had been waiting for her all this time. Yulia noticed the green sweater, the one she had refused to take before, and her throat tightened, tears flowed freely. She knelt down and cried again until evening. She returned wearing the green sweater over her morning black dress. It was the best sweater in the world, something she hadn't realized before. She was lucky she didn't have to wait for the bus. From the bus stop, their neighbor Alexei picked her up, who was driving his wife and daughter to town for shopping. They drove off, learning that no one had told her about Grandma's death. They explained that she had been ill for a long time. But perhaps Grandma had asked not to tell Yulia. Joyful that she had arrived in town so quickly, Yulia hurried straight home. At home, a new shock awaited her, mundane and tawdry, her best friend Tatiana in bed with her Igor. And the first thing she heard was not an apology or regret, but "Why are you back so early?" Yulia had a hard time remembering the next 6 months. She moved out from Igor, and he didn't stop her, guiltily avoiding eye contact. Tatiana didn't ask for forgiveness, claiming no one was at fault. Love had awakened between them, and all that stuff. "Oh, Grandma, how right you were." Yulia worked a lot, stopped talking to mutual friends, took language courses, ran along the waterfront in the evenings. Did everything to keep herself busy. And more often than not, she thought not about Igor and the traitor Tatiana, but about Grandma. She wrapped herself in the green sweater even in the summer heat, cried at night. Autumn was warm, and she often walked in the evenings. One day, completely by chance, she saw Igor and Tatiana. They were walking hand in hand, laughing about something. Yulia sat on a bench and realized that a meeting was inevitable. Soon they would level with her and see her. To avoid this, she jumped up from the bench and hurried up the lawn. Tears clouded her eyes, and she walked faster and faster, almost running. It was only after about 20 minutes that she calmed down a bit, slowed her pace. And immediately she felt cold. Evenings cooled quickly, unlike summer. Sweater. She had forgotten Grandma's sweater on the bench. The fear dried her tears in an instant. Yulia ran back, mentally addressing Grandma, "Please help, please help." When she found the right bench, the sweater wasn't there. Yulia looked around in dismay. Who could have taken this sweater? Who would need it? Besides herself. She had a feeling as if Grandma had died again. Mississippi. I heard a pleasant unfamiliar voice. She turned around. A guy stood before her. It seemed she had seen him a couple of times during her jogs. He even seemed to have smiled at her. But Yulia always looked away. "Is this your sweater?" He raised his hand and waved the green fabric. Yulia almost screamed with joy. "Yes, it's mine." She rushed forward, snatched the sweater, and hugged it to herself. She realized it might have seemed a bit rough. "Thank you," she smiled. "This sweater means a lot to me." "Why?" The question was so sincere and simple. She couldn't help but answer. "My grandma knitted it for me." The guy smiled broadly. "Oh, I have a sweater too. It's terribly itchy. But I always wear it when I visit my grandma. It's no trouble for me, and she likes it. Grandmas love knitting, don't they?" "Mine isn't here anymore," Yulia confessed. The understanding guy nodded. "Are you out for a walk here?" he asked. Yulia shrugged. "Yes, but I'm heading home now." He nodded again. "Can I walk you home?" Yulia wanted to refuse, but then a light breeze ruffled the sweater, reminding her of something. Suddenly, Yulia felt a scent of lavender and rosehip decoction in the air. "Yes, you can," she decided. "I'm Yulia, by the way." "And you?" "I'm Andre." He reached out and shook her hand. His hand was warm and pleasant. And Yulia felt that something very good had just begun. Something real. Something real. Something real.